The doorman blocked her path. His tone was cold. Private event. Guests only. His eyes swept over the simple black dress, the brown skin, lingering with quiet suspicion. Jordan stopped. She didn't answer, only smiled. A smile she couldn't tell was defiance or self-protection. Inside, something old stirred again. That familiar ache of being kept outside the doors of a world she'd helped build. Behind her, a few soft laughs, polite, sharp, cutting. The air thickened with condescension. Jordan opened her clutch, pulled out her phone. One tap. A message sent. Within seconds, the music inside went silent. She turned away, the night wind brushing her hair, carrying the faintest trace of a smile. They would remember this face, just not for the reason they thought. Jordan approached the check-in table with quiet confidence. The ballroom entrance buzzed with arrivals, tuxedos, couture gowns, the choreographed dance of high society. She extended the invitation, cream cardstock embossed in gold. Jordan Blake. The young woman behind the table, blonde hair pulled tight, barely glanced before sweeping her tablet. "I don't see your name here." Ice without apology. Jordan kept her tone even. "Could you check again? I was officially invited." The woman's gaze traveled from Jordan's face to her shoes and back, lingering with assessment that had nothing to do with the invitation. "Are you sure you have the right event? This is the Prescott family gala. It's not open to just anyone." The pause before anyone carried weight. Around them, conversations paused. Heads turned. A couple in navy stopped mid-stride. A group near the champagne fountain leaned in, whispering behind raised glasses. No one moved to help. No one questioned the receptionist's tone. They simply watched, as if Jordan were an unexpected interruption to their carefully curated evening. Jordan didn't flinch. She had learned long ago that the first test of power wasn't demanding respect. It was refusing to beg for it. "I'm certain, Jordan Blake, CEO of Orion Global." The receptionist's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Orion Global." She repeated the name as if testing its validity, then shook her head. "I'm sorry, but if you're not on the list, I can't let you in. Perhaps there's been some confusion on your end." The way she said confusion made it clear she believed the mistake was Jordan's. Around them, murmurs grew. A woman in ruby red whispered to her companion, both glancing at Jordan with thinly veiled amusement. A man in charcoal pulled out his phone, angling it toward the scene. Others began to gather, drawn by drama, forming a loose semicircle. Jordan remained still, hands loose at her sides, breathing steady. She noted the phones emerging from pockets, people positioning for a better view, anticipation rippling through the crowd. She had been here before, not this exact ballroom, not these exact people, but in 1,000 moments just like this. Boardrooms where she was mistaken for the assistant. Conferences where her name tag was checked 3 times. Restaurants where hosts assumed she was waiting for someone more important. She observed each face, memorizing the angles of their smirks, the casual cruelty in their eyes. She would remember them all, not for revenge, but because memory was power and documentation was survival. These people had no idea what they were about to witness. A man in his mid-50s materialized beside the check-in table, gray suit tailored to intimidate, hand resting on his hip in a posture of authority. Marcus, the security manager, had the build of someone who had spent years enforcing boundaries. "Is there a problem here?" His eyes settled on Jordan with the kind of suspicion reserved for people he'd already decided didn't belong. The receptionist leaned in, her voice pitched just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "She claims she was invited, but her name isn't on the VIP list." Marcus turned to Jordan, his assessment clinical and cold. "Do you have identification? And what is it you do?" "Exactly?" The question wasn't about verification, it was about establishing hierarchy, about reminding Jordan that she was the one who needed to prove herself, not them. Jordan reached into her clutch and produced a business card, extending it with steady fingers. CEO, Orion Global. Marcus took the card, held it up to the light as if checking for forgery, then set it down on the table with deliberate slowness. Orion Global. He said the name the way one might say a word in a foreign language they didn't quite trust. Can't say I've heard of it. Could be there's been some misunderstanding. His tone suggested the misunderstanding was entirely on Jordan's part, that perhaps she'd confused an invitation with wishful thinking. Around them, the semicircle of onlookers tightened. More people had stopped to watch now, drinks in hand, conversations abandoned in favor of the spectacle unfolding at the entrance. A few held their phones openly now, no longer pretending discretion. They wanted to capture this, whatever this was turning into. No one stepped forward to intervene. No one suggested that perhaps the list was wrong, that perhaps Jordan was telling the truth. The silence of their complicity was louder than any accusation. Jordan observed them all, her gaze moving methodically from face to face. She catalogued the expensive watches, the designer handbags, the smug certainty in their expressions. These were people accustomed to being right by virtue of their presence, people who had never had to prove they deserved to be in a room. She noted the security cameras mounted in the corners, the chandeliers casting everything in theatrical light, the marble floors that would carry sound like an amphitheater. Everything was being recorded, by the venue, by the guests, by history itself. She wasn't worried. She was prepared. Marcus crossed his arms, his stance widening as if to physically block her path. Look, I'm sure this is all just confusion, but without confirmation, I can't let you proceed. Perhaps you'd like to contact whoever invited you and sort this out. Elsewhere? The suggestion was clear. Leave quietly, avoid further embarrassment. Accept that this world wasn't meant for her. Jordan's voice remained calm, measured, the same tone she used in boardrooms when presenting quarterly projections. I'm happy to wait while you verify. Jordan Blake, Orion Global, I believe you'll find everything in order. She didn't move toward the door, didn't retreat. She simply stood there, occupying space she had every right to occupy, refusing to make herself smaller for their comfort. The receptionist exchanged a glance with Marcus, something unspoken passing between them. A shared understanding that this woman, this intruder, needed to be handled. Marcus reached for his radio, about to call for additional security, when a voice cut through the tension like a blade. Who authorized this woman's entry? The voice was patrician, aged, carrying the weight of inherited authority. William Prescott III emerged from the ballroom's interior, silver hair impeccably styled, navy tuxedo custom-fitted to his 70-year-old frame. He moved through the crowd with the ease of someone who had never questioned his right to any space he occupied. His eyes found Jordan and swept over her with the kind of dismissal reserved for things beneath notice. Mr. Prescott. Marcus straightened immediately, his deference automatic. We're handling a situation here. This woman claims she was invited, but... Claims. Prescott repeated the word, investing it with skepticism. He stepped closer to Jordan, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and oppressive. This is a private event, not a public forum. I don't know how you got this far, but this is not the place for disruptions. The pause before disruptions was intentional, loaded with implications he didn't need to speak aloud. His gaze flickered over her skin, her hair, her dress, all the visible markers that placed her outside his world. Jordan met his eyes without flinching. My name is Jordan Blake. I'm the CEO of Orion Global. I received an official invitation to attend this evening. Her voice remained level, professional, carrying none of the anger that simmered beneath her composure. Prescott's mouth curved into something between a smile and a sneer. Orion Global? He turned slightly, addressing the crowd as much as Jordan. I'm currently negotiating with Orion Global, and I've yet to meet any CEO named Blake. Are you perhaps an assistant? Or someone's +1 who got confused about the dress code? The laughter that followed was quiet but unmistakable, rippling through the gathered crowd like a wave of shared cruelty. Several phones were now openly pointed at Jordan, recording every word, every expression. A young man in the back whispered, "This is gold," to his companion, thumbs already typing on his screen. Others held their devices at chest level, pretending to check messages while their cameras captured the scene. The lights from their screens created a constellation of judgment, a digital audience bearing witness to what they believed was Jordan's humiliation. Jordan didn't respond to the laughter. She had learned over years of breaking through barriers that weren't meant to be broken that silence could be a weapon more effective than words. Instead, she reached into her clutch and withdrew her phone, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She typed a quick message. "Prepare everything. Document this." Then she looked back at Prescott, her expression unchanged. "You'll know soon enough who I am." Prescott's face hardened, the amusement draining from his features. "Is that a threat?" His voice rose, drawing even more attention. "Because I don't take kindly to being threatened, especially not in my own event, by someone who clearly doesn't belong here." He gestured to Marcus. "Get her out, now. And if she resists, call the police. I want her removed for trespassing." Marcus moved toward Jordan, flanked now by 2 additional security personnel who had materialized from the edges of the room. The crowd pressed closer, phones raised higher, commentary beginning to spread through the gathered guests. "Can you believe this?" someone murmured. "The audacity," another added. A woman in diamonds shook her head, clucking her tongue in performative disapproval. Jordan stood her ground, her hands at her sides, her breathing steady despite the bodies closing in around her. She had been pushed out of rooms before, boardrooms, country clubs, gallery openings, always with the same script, the same unspoken message. You don't belong here, you never will. But this time was different. This time, she had let them play their hand completely. This time, she had documentation. This time, she had power they couldn't see yet. "Mr. Prescott," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. "Before your security escorts me out, I'd suggest you answer your phone." As if on cue, Prescott's phone began to vibrate in his jacket pocket, the buzz audible in the sudden hush that had fallen over the entrance hall. Prescott ignored it, his face flushed with indignation. "I don't need to answer anything. Marcus, I said remove her. Immediately." But Marcus had paused, his own phone lighting up with a notification. Nearby, Richard Hale, Prescott's personal attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and an expression of permanent superiority, pulled out his tablet, his brow furrowing as he read the email that had just arrived. The subject line was visible even from a distance. CEO Jordan Blake, official confirmation. Jordan watched as confusion rippled through the inner circle, watched as phones began buzzing throughout the crowd, watched as the first cracks appeared in their certainty. These procedures, these rituals of exclusion, weren't random. They were systematic, designed to keep people like her on the outside looking in. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that she had stopped asking for permission to enter their world years ago. She had built her own, and they were standing in it. The ballroom doors opened behind Prescott, and the real reckoning walked through. Marcus took a step toward Jordan, his hand outstretched as if to guide her or force her toward the exit. But Prescott raised his hand, stopping him mid-motion. "Wait." The older man's eyes narrowed, studying Jordan with renewed interest, the kind a cat might give a mouse before deciding whether to play or pounce. "I want to understand something first. You walk into my event, you claim to be someone you're not, and now you're telling me to check my phone." He laughed, sharp and humorless. What exactly is your game here? Jordan didn't move. No game, Mr. Prescott. I'm here for the same reason everyone else is. The Orion Global Partnership you've been pursuing for 6 months. The deal you need to save Prescott Tower. Her voice was calm, factual, as if she were reading from a quarterly report rather than standing surrounded by hostile security. Prescott's expression shifted, amusement giving way to something darker. You're talking about $1 billion transaction. Do you have any idea how many people are involved in that negotiation? How many layers of approval? And you expect me to believe that you— He gestured vaguely at her, the gesture encompassing everything he refused to say aloud. That you have any authority over it? I don't expect you to believe anything, Jordan replied, her tone unchanged. I'm simply stating a fact. I'm the person who decides whether you get that signature or not. For a moment, Prescott stared at her, something flickering behind his eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the first stirring of doubt. Then he shook his head, dismissing it. This is absurd. You're either delusional or you're running some kind of con, and either way, I don't have time for it. He turned to Marcus. Get her out of here, now. Richard, Prescott's voice carried across the entrance hall, summoning his attorney. Come deal with this. I want her gone, and I want documentation in case she tries anything legal. Richard Hale approached with the measured stride of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in any room. He positioned himself slightly in front of Prescott, creating a barrier between his client and Jordan, then looked at her over the rim of his glasses. Ms. Blake, was it? His tone was that of an adult addressing a child who'd gotten into the liquor cabinet. I personally met with Orion Global representatives last week. A gentleman named Carter, white, mid-50s, very professional. He never mentioned a CEO named Blake. Carter is the CFO, Jordan said. I'm the CEO. I signed the final contracts. Hale's smile was thin and sharp. That's a very creative story. He turned to address the crowd, his voice projecting with courtroom precision. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption. It appears we have someone here who's fabricated quite an elaborate identity. A few people nodded, murmuring agreement. The woman in ruby red spoke up. I knew something was off. You can always tell. A man in a gray suit added. Probably saw the guest list online and thought she could bluff her way in. The crowd pressed closer now, no longer just observers but participants. Their phones were everywhere, multiple angles capturing Jordan from all sides. Live streams running with real-time commentary scrolling past. One young man held his phone high, narrating for his followers. So there's this woman who crashed the Prescott Gala, claiming she's some CEO. Security's about to throw her out. This is insane. The comments flooded in. She's embarrassing herself. Why don't people know their place? Call the cops already. Jordan's jaw tightened, the first visible sign of strain. She could feel the walls closing in. Not physical walls, but the invisible barriers these people erected with such practiced ease. This was how systems worked, how power protected itself. Not through overt violence, but through collective dismissal, through the casual agreement that some people simply didn't belong. She had broken through these barriers before, but never with so many witnesses. Never with the stakes this high. She reached for her phone again, her fingers steady despite the pressure. Another message. Alexandra, it's time. Bring everything. Then she looked up at Hale, at Prescott, at the semicircle of faces that had already convicted her without trial. You should check your emails, she said quietly. All of you. Prescott's face flushed crimson, veins visible at his temples. Enough! His voice cracked through the space like a whip. I have been patient. I have been civilized, but I'm done with this circus. He jabbed a finger toward Jordan, his hand shaking with rage. Marcus, call the police. I want this woman arrested for criminal trespassing. I want her charged with attempted fraud. I want her name on a list that ensures she never gets within a mile of any event I or my associates host." Marcus pulled out his radio, but Hale placed a hand on his arm. "Wait, let me handle this properly." The attorney stepped closer to Jordan, close enough that she could see the coldness in his eyes, the absolute certainty of someone who had never lost. "Ms. Blake, you have one final opportunity to leave quietly. Walk out now, and we'll consider this a misunderstanding. Stay, and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. Criminal trespassing, fraud, defamation. We have 50 witnesses and multiple video recordings. You'll be tied up in court for years. Is that really what you want?" The phones were now pressed forward in a tight constellation of lenses, the crowd forming a complete circle around Jordan with no clear path to any exit. The young man live streaming had switched to his front camera, narrating breathlessly. "She's cornered now. Security's about to move in. Someone said they're calling cops. This is going to get crazy." His view count climbed. 200 people watching live, then 500, then 1,000, the numbers accelerating as the algorithm detected engagement. Comments scrolled faster. "Drag her out. She thought she could fake it." Another scammer exposed. But then, mixed in with the hostility, other voices began to appear. "Wait, why isn't anyone checking if she's telling the truth? Something feels off about this. Why are they so aggressive?" The tide hadn't turned yet, but small eddies of doubt were forming. Marcus's radio crackled. "Sir, we have NYPD on standby if you need them." His hand moved to Jordan's elbow, not grabbing yet, but hovering, ready to enforce Prescott's will the moment permission was granted. The other two security guards flanked her sides, boxing her in. The message was clear. She had run out of time, run out of options, run out of whatever bluff she'd been running. Jordan felt her phone vibrate in her hand. A single message. 2 minutes out. Hold. She looked at Prescott, at Hale, at Marcus, at the dozens of faces surrounding her, faces that had already decided who she was, what she represented, whether she deserved to exist in their world. She had built Orion Global from nothing. She had fought through every closed door, every dismissive meeting, every investor who looked past her to ask, "Where's the real CEO?" She had earned every dollar, every client, every ounce of respect her company commanded. And these people, in their inherited wealth and unexamined privilege, thought they could erase all of that with a phone call to the police. "Mr. Prescott," she said, her voice cutting through the noise with surgical precision. "Are you absolutely certain you want to make that call?" Prescott's eyes blazed. "More certain than I've ever been about anything." He pulled out his own phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. "This is your last chance. Leave now, or I make one call and your life becomes a legal nightmare." At that exact moment, 3 things happened simultaneously. Prescott's phone began to ring, not a text, but an actual call, the screen flashing, "Executive Assistant Urgent." Hale's tablet chimed with an incoming email, the preview visible to those close enough to see. "Urgent, Orion Global CEO verification required." And the ballroom's main entrance doors swung open, the motion triggering the automatic announcement system that called out for every VIP arrival. But the name that echoed through the speakers wasn't one anyone expected. Alexandra Ross, Chief Operating Officer, Orion Global. The automated announcement stopped every conversation. Alexandra Ross entered with authority that needed no explanation. A black woman in her 40s, gray Armani suit impeccable, flanked by 2 attorneys carrying leather portfolios. Her heels struck marble with rhythmic precision. She moved through the parted crowd without hesitation, stopping before Jordan and inclining her head with unmistakable respect. "Ms. Blake, my apologies for the delay. We've prepared everything as requested." Then she turned to Prescott, her expression shifting to cold formality. "Mr. Prescott, I am Chief Operating Officer of Orion Global. This is our CEO, Jordan Blake. She was invited officially. Her name was submitted to your VIP list 9 days ago." She produced a tablet showing an email chain with Prescott's corporate letterhead. "Here is your assistant's confirmation." Prescott's face went from crimson to ash. His mouth opened, soundless. Hale fumbled his tablet, fingers trembling as he read the email. Official Orion headers, board certifications, corporate directory clearly listing Jordan Blake as CEO and founder. The crowd's energy shifted like sudden change in air pressure. Phones that had recorded Jordan's humiliation now swiveled toward Prescott. The live streamer stammered, "Wait, she's actually, oh my God." Comments exploded. "Called it. They're about to get destroyed." View count spiked. 5,000, 10,000, climbing exponentially. Jordan stepped forward. The crowd parted instinctively. "Mr. Prescott, you just spent 15 minutes trying to have me arrested. You questioned my credentials, dismissed my authority, threatened me with legal action." Each word landed with precision. "You did this before witnesses, with cameras recording, and you did it to the CEO of the only company that can save Prescott Tower from bankruptcy." Prescott's throat worked. Hale stepped back, face drained. "Ms. Blake, there must have been confusion with check-in." There was no confusion. Jordan cut through his stammering. "Your staff saw my name, my invitation. They chose not to believe it because I didn't look like what you expected a CEO to look like." She gestured to the receptionist, to Marcus. "This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. Choices have consequences." Alexandra opened a portfolio. "The termination documents are ready for your signature." "Termination?" Prescott's voice cracked. "We've been negotiating for months. The tower project depends on this." "Had." Jordan accepted a pen. "You had investors and commitments. Past tense." She laid the document on the check-in table, the same table where she'd been denied, and signed in bold strokes. "Orion Global withdraws from all negotiations with Prescott Enterprises, effective immediately. The $1 billion credit line, canceled. The partnership that would have refinanced your properties, void. The deal that would have saved Prescott Tower, dead." Silence, broken only by phone cameras clicking and someone's sharp breath. Prescott swayed, gripping a column. Hale backed against the wall, clutching his tablet. One of Alexandra's attorneys stepped forward. "Orion Global's legal team has documented this incident through venue security, witness accounts, and considerable social media video. We're reviewing whether tonight's actions constitute actionable discrimination under federal and state law." The crowd shifted from hostile to horrified. The woman in ruby red stood with hand over mouth. The man who'd called Jordan a scammer edged toward exits. Others froze, realizing they'd filmed their own complicity in an unfolding catastrophe. Alexandra's team formed a protective semicircle, not for physical protection, but to send a message. Jordan Blake didn't stand alone. The attorneys stood with portfolios open, documenting everything, creating a record. Their positioning was strategic, professional, proud to stand with their CEO. The live streamer captured it all, stunned silence, shifting body language, the moment power visibly changed hands. His viewer count passed 50,000, comments scrolling too fast to read. The story was already spreading. Jordan stood in the entrance of the Metropolitan Aurora Ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of assumptions, and felt the weight of her own dignity settle back onto her shoulders. Within 48 hours, the video had 15 million views across platforms. The hashtag #JordanBlakeJustice trended globally. News outlets ran it everywhere. Billionaire humiliates black CEO at Gala, loses everything. The footage was undeniable. Prescott's sneer, Hale's condescension, the crowd's laughter, then the devastating reversal. Prescott Enterprises stock opened Monday down 18%. By close, 40% gone. The Orion deal hadn't just been important, it was the linchpin. Without it, Prescott Tower's construction loans came due with no refinancing. Other projects followed like dominoes, revealing how over-leveraged everything had become. The board held emergency sessions. By Wednesday, William Prescott III had resigned as chairman, citing personal reasons. The real reason was in closed-door minutes: resign or be terminated publicly. He was barred from all management, his name removed from letterhead, his office cleared by security. The man who built an empire on inherited wealth watched it crumble in 72 hours. The receptionist and Marcus were terminated immediately, their dismissals announced company-wide. No severance, no references. The company issued a public apology, carefully worded, legally vetted, conspicuously avoiding the word racism while apologizing for exactly that. Richard Hale's reckoning came through the New York State Bar Association. They opened an investigation within 3 days: failure to perform due diligence, participation in discriminatory practices, conduct prejudicial to justice. His firm asked him to take leave. By month's end, the bar suspended his license indefinitely. He would never practice law in New York again. The Department of Justice opened a preliminary inquiry into whether Prescott Enterprises had engaged in systematic discrimination. Internal emails surfaced, messages about culture fit and maintaining standards that looked different now. Former employees came forward with their own stories. The company faced federal investigation, civil suits, and reputational damage no press release could fix. Prescott himself became the target of a separate DOJ investigation into civil rights violations. Legal experts suggested 3 to 5 years in federal prison if prosecutors made an example. The man who tried to have Jordan arrested now faced his own potential mugshot. Social media became an ongoing tribunal. Thousands shared their stories under Jordan Blake Justice. Jordan's face became a symbol, not just of personal vindication, but of a reckoning long overdue. Prescott vanished from public life. Memberships revoked. Invitations stopped. Friends didn't call back. He became a cautionary tale, his name invoked as an example of what happened when privilege finally met consequences. And Jordan Blake's phone kept ringing, not with demands, but with opportunities. She had become more than a CEO. She had become a symbol of refusing to accept the limitations others tried to impose. 1 week later, Jordan stood before 3,000 people at the National Empowerment Summit in Washington. The applause when she was introduced lasted nearly a minute, recognition that transcended her individual story and became communal. She waited for silence, hands resting on the podium. "I didn't cancel that contract to punish William Prescott. I canceled it to demonstrate something we forget when fighting for a seat at someone else's table. Dignity is not negotiable. The moment you trade your dignity for opportunity, you've lost something no contract can buy back." In the front rows, people nodded. Some had tears of recognition. I've been underestimated my entire career, not because I lacked credentials or vision, but because I didn't look like what power was supposed to look like. For years, I believed the solution was to be so excellent, they'd have no choice but to see me. Her voice softened. But excellence without respect is just unpaid overtime on someone else's dream. Real power isn't about being so good they can't ignore you. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that their recognition becomes irrelevant. Applause started, but Jordan raised a hand gently. That night, I could have walked away, called my attorney from the car, handled it through back channels. Maybe that would have been smarter, safer, but I stayed because too many of us have walked away from rooms where we had every right to be. We've accepted the quiet exit, the polite dismissal, the suggestion that maybe we misunderstood. Her voice strengthened. I'm done letting it go. Not because I want you to destroy opponents or burn down institutions, but because I want you to build your own tables, tables where your presence isn't questioned, where your dignity is the foundation, not the negotiation. She looked at the sea of faces. The system that tried to remove me wasn't created by one billionaire. It was built over generations until it became so normalized that people enforced it without thinking. That's how systems work. They don't need villains, just people who don't question patterns. And those systems don't change because we ask politely. They change when we refuse to play by rules designed to exclude us. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. You don't need their approval. You need your own conviction about your worth and willingness to walk away from any deal that requires you to diminish yourself. The real power isn't in rooms they let you enter. It's in rooms you build yourself and doors you hold open for everyone coming after you. The screen behind Jordan displayed, "Dignity is not negotiable." She smiled, not seeking approval, but the quiet smile of someone who had already won. If this story reached you, don't let the feeling evaporate. Share it. Not for me, but for the person who needs to hear they're not alone. For the professional, told they're not ready yet for the third year. For the entrepreneur asked, but who's really in charge? For everyone made to feel they don't belong in spaces they built or earned. She moved to the stage edge, closing distance with the audience. When you see it happening, and you will, speak up, not with violence, but with clarity. Say, I see what's happening, and it's not acceptable. Be the person who questions the pattern instead of enforcing it. Jordan's voice took on an edge, playful but pointed. Here's what they won't tell you in business school. The people who wrote the rules, they're not actually good at playing the game. They're just comfortable with a game designed for them to win. But when you change the game, when you build something they can't control, suddenly their inherited confidence doesn't mean much. The audience laughed, genuine, knowing laughter. Power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the person who knows when to speak and when to let actions talk. The person who can stand in hostility and think clearly, move strategically. Remember that dignity isn't about winning every argument. It's about never losing yourself. Her expression shifted to something more intimate. In their world, rules keep you asking permission, grateful for access. But empires built on exclusion are only as strong as the people who agree to stay locked out. The moment you stop asking and start building, the architecture cracks. Jordan's final words were deliberate, each landing with weight. Build your empire. Build it on respect, competence, the radical act of believing in your worth when no one else does. And when you're standing in the room you built, remember what it felt like to be outside. Remember, and hold the door open. She looked into the cameras. Dignity is not negotiable. It doesn't require their permission or understanding. It only requires your refusal to surrender it. They thought they could take mine that night. They were wrong. Don't let them take yours.